First of all, big thanks to the conference organizers who's been setting all this together in a very short amount of time, and thank you to Lara, Victor, and Daniel for organizing it as well. So, this paper, Neue Welt, Internet, Life and Machines, is the beginning of one of the chapters of my doctoral dissertation on the German artist Wolfgang Tillmans, with a focus on pictures, technologies, materiality, sociality, and even the avant-garde. The aim is, however, not to write a bibliography of neither the artist's life or his practice. His material is extensive, actually more extensive than I expected, and examining his entire work would be a too comprehensive task for a dissertation of this kind. I want to begin this paper by quoting a larger long quote by Tillmans himself. I quote, "In connection to this, 3 or 4 years ago, I came across the sentence, 'Life is astronomical.' I see the Earth, and most importantly, all living things, as merely the formation of a particular astronomical condition, which specifically exists on this planet. The human assumption that we all heed the life on Earth is in itself separate. We live on the Earth, we populate the Earth, and save the planet. Just isn't so, because we are the planet. All of us are the formation of these conditions, and for that reason, only the expression of an astrological concussion. The same is inherent in the juxtaposition of people, plants, constructions, and technologies. Everything is matter, continually renewing itself and transforming one from one aggregate state into another." End of quote. So these are the German artist Wolfgang Tillmans' notes in an interview with Beatrice Roof, published in his artist book entitled Neue Welt from 2010. Excuse me. The words emphasize that everything on the planet is matter, humans, plants, technologies, and that these matters constantly are transforming and changing one another. This hypothesis seems to linger throughout the body of pictures entitled Neue Welt and invites towards an exploration of the existence and formation of life and technologies. With these remarks in mind, the objective of this paper is to explore how the technologies involved in Tillmans' pictures change their meaning and the ways to understand images. Focusing on what he refers to as Neue Welt, his work after 2009, taken with a high-definition digital camera, I will more specifically investigate the agency of the technologies involved, hence the technological processes. Such agency, I will argue, changes what pictures are and their lives, to borrow W.J.T. Mitchell's term. It moreover changes the meaning, so the material meaning as pictures themselves, and also the material meaning of the object photographed. And as we eventually will see, my concerns involves questions of matter and social ontology, and the synergies between objects and subjects, and nature and culture, questions that don't only conceptualize the technological, but also the social. By revealing the technological framework of Neue Welt and Tillmans' mode of production, I would like to trace the social processes they advance, hence their social functions. Sociality and technologies are not that much discussed within the discourse of contemporary art, despite that they are often very interrelated. Yet, since the development of media technologies in the 20th century and 21st century, of course, their exchange has continuously changed. On her notes on the autobiography of the video technology, Ina Blum writes that new media technologies do not just provide new forms of visual expression, but also new modes of production, distribution, and public presence. In short, new social surfaces, unquote. But what then ideas of new forms of social surfaces are provided by the new media technologies in Tillmans' work. What is a social surface? How do the technological agency of images affect what pictures are, their meaning, and their lives? More precisely, what happens when human flesh, natural objects, and technologies become programmed, digitized, and then reproduced as inkjet liquid on large-scale paper? These are questions I'm currently aiming to investigate through my work and to which I'm still searching for answers. So in 2009, Tillmans shifts his attention towards the high-definition digital camera. His practice can, however, be traced back to the 80s, late 80s, when he started to explore pictures and pictorial reproduction through the classic photocopier. From the 90s and onwards, he produces a large material of still lifes. Portraits of his friends and lovers, a large variety of abstracts made in the darkroom without a camera lens. So that's from his series Lighter, and that's from his series Freischwimmer. Whatever the technology used in his production, the emphasis is consistently on the material means and mechanisms behind pictures. This mechanical shift, as I refer to it, from working with photographic paper in the darkroom in diverse abstract ways, the photocopier, and the analog camera, and further towards the digital technology, generates a new picture category of his pictures. The shift profoundly produces new questions of the materiality of pictures and new media technologies. The definition of this latest moment becomes Neue Welt, new worlds. Neue Welt is also the title of Tillmans' first exhibition with primarily digital images at Andrea Rosen Gallery in New York in 2013. And that's a picture from that show. And the artist book under the same title. The book and exhibition, nevertheless, also consists of his earlier works, and this mixing with old work and new work is an editing aesthetic strong in his practice, both in terms of his exhibitions and his artist books. The title Neue Welt was inspired by Albert Renger-Pach's 1928 photo book, Die Welt ist schön, The World is Beautiful, a work that was influenced by the German New Objectivity. So as I mentioned, Neue Welt is here understood as Tillmans' digital turn, and not only the specific book or the exhibitions I just mentioned. As the title suggests, the most element theme of Neue Welt is the interrelation between nature and technology. It is fascinating to see how the world's surface is changing, Tillmans continues in his book. Hence, it's necessary to examine how certain media technologies practiced in Neue Welt serve to form the condition of the materiality of the medium itself. Tillmans' Neue Welt embodies some of the fundamental theoretical occupations of my ongoing dissertation, namely the materiality and sociality that occurs inside and in between new media technologies. What if we interpreted technologies and material substance not simply as commodities or as instrumental boxes, but also as actants? I borrowed a term from Bruno Latour, who defines an actant as a source of action that can be either human or non-human. An actor is an entity that modifies another entity. A source of material power that can do things, has sufficient coherence to make a difference, produce effects, alter the course of events. Events are social, technologies are discursive, and through the agency of the technological apparatuses, one can understand its power and social processes. Methodologically, media archaeology can here become an accessible approach. I quote Jussi Padikka, "A recent wave of media archaeologists have started to look at time-critical processes inside the machines and in the circuits of contemporary technology," unquote. This research aims not to extend our knowledge of the archive, one of the large interests of media archaeology, but to explore the renewed concerns in matter, materiality, objects, the non-human, an approach namely referred to as new materialism. Neue Welt, as I will argue, makes one rethink materiality, not only of pictures, but also of human life, technologies, and nature. And chancing la tous actants, it thus seems significant to introduce the vibrant matter of Jane Bennett. I quote, why advocate the vitality of matter? Because my hunch is that the image of that or throughout instrumentalized matter feeds human new breeds and our earth-destroying fantasies of conquest and consumption. It does so by preventing us from detecting, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling a fuller range of non-human powers circulating around and within human bodies. These material powers, which can err or destroy, enrich or disable, ennoble or degrade us, in any case call for our attentiveness, unquote. From a political and matter perspective, Bennett particularly pursues Latour's notion of the actant as well as Deleuze's materiality in shifting from the language of epistemology to ontology. She formulates a way to make sense of thing power, the active role of non-human materials in public life. In what follows, I will return to Tillmans' note on everything is matter, continue renewing itself and transforming from one aggregate state to another. So, what kind of objects are to be found in Neue Welt? What are their possible lives, and how do we make sense of them? Maybe I should show you some pictures. The distinction between the natural object and the technological object is erased in Tillmans' digital work, or at least to a certain extent. The natural world is mediated, and its concepts is constantly explored. Nature becomes a part of the technological world, and vice versa. Here one can argue that the picture technologies produce new forms of life, a new social reality. Yet, its life is now on the surface and within the social relations between surfaces, technologies, and materials. The agency and optical promises of the high-definition technology produces and distributes images that constitute a new materiality of the world. The camera becomes an extension of our eye. I suddenly had to deal with high definition, that every picture now sees more than what my eye can see. Tillmans himself continues. The inkjet liquids and print techniques facilitates the materialization, and combined with the aesthetic possibilities of the high-definition digital camera, they provide a highly rich color saturation and jewel-like precision that gives one access to a new world, a different world, or perhaps a different idea of life. Technologies are real social subjects in themselves. The same can be understood about pictures. The pictures fabricates an experience and changes the appearance of what pictures are and how they affect us. And as Tillmans notes in Art Forum, Just as there are colors and resolution that we could never have seen before, so there are things we could never have tasted or felt or understood, end of quote. Digital technologies indeed change how we feel, taste, and understand images. It forces our perception of the world that through the technological processes become a part of the world, or even creates a new world. As a technological object in itself, he opens up things. Flash, objects, inkjet printers, natural objects, explores the material substance, depicts them and print them as objects back into the world. I'm almost there. 1 minute? Okay. Ooh, okay, I need to go through this quickly. So this becomes even more explicit in his series, The Central Nervous System. The title itself, Central Nervous System, illustrates Tillmans' treatment of the imagining matter of the human body and makes us rethink what a human body is when conceptualized and reproduced by machines, here the digital camera. The media technologies entangle and change the motive of the pictures. The camera transforms the human skin into digital codes before it becomes reproduced and printed with ink on large-scale paper. New social realities appear, images become living lives and gives one access to a different world, at least to a certain extent. So Tillmans treats the inkjet as a technological thing in itself. Rather obviously, the pictures contain depictions of machines and technologies that map produces a variety of different objects, fruit, art, paper, ink, pictures, and so forth, which edited with poetic abstract representative pictures of people, creates a rhythm and underlines the closenesses between the mechanical and non-mechanical, human and non-human, and objects and subjects, of course. His objects become a body without organs. The work leaves space for a discussion of media machines, the digital camera and the inkjet printer, while it produces a specific condition of social machines. The term arises from the concept of desiring machines introduced by Deleuze and Guattari, a concept they later referred to as the machinic assemblage. However, it seems time to come to some concluding notes. In Tillmans' digital world, human flesh is replaced and remediated with ink via digital codes. This technological and social process, or processes, simultaneously forces one to explore and perhaps rethink concepts of subject and subjectivity and the synergy of human and natural life. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for this invitation to Universidad de Barcelona, Universidad Abierta de Cataluña and Angar, and thanks to the audience for being here today. I'm going to present briefly my research. I'm undertaking my PhD. Now? It's better? Yeah? Okay, so I'm undertaking my PhD at Oviedo's University within the Department of Sociology and Art History. I've been trained as a biologist years and years ago, and I moved from that to art. And my favorite lab is the open field laboratory, which is the landscape. And the main questions that arise from my research are two very general ones. One is how the modes of biotechnological manipulation detach the ways of production and reproductions of beings from the communities in which they are historically immersed. And the other question is how can artistic projects do transform the ways in which we inhabit and we coexist. And this very general question, then, they focus on how art, contemporary art, and some specific projects, they do mediate in the way in which we commonly understand what's nature, landscape, or environment in a very common language. And for this specific conference, I was thinking about all these new projects that are emerging, and they are dealing with subjects related to environment or landscape, or perhaps they are placed in rural areas or the countryside. And I think I've reading Isabel Stenger's, if they really do have this ecological turn in terms of how do they slow down on the production of science and art. And what I do for my PhD thesis is mainly to study the perception of some particular communities, human communities, from different geographical and social backgrounds. How do they perceive nature today? I work with different theoretical frameworks, and I came from this idea of diversity is a key element, and is biodiversity, I understand it from this genetic heritage, but also strongly related to the local knowledge and how biotechnology is transforming both. So I thank to Sara for the introduction of Jane Bennett's idea of vibrant matter, which is a key element for my research and the way in which I try to analyze my subjects. And I understand it as a sort of phenomenology in which we can trace the history of elements taken from biodiversity, looking at their lifespan, their cycles, but also the historical time and the geological time. And with this, we can kind of trace or have a wider image of what are the relationships within a social context. And vibrant matter. So I also think that it's important to look at the ecology's movements, the social movements, and the way in which they work, they organize, and the formats they use to work. Also to look at the philosophy of ecology and philosophy of nature, and to come to a sort of political ecology to understand what nature is today. This political ecology is focused on the history of sciences. It's impossible to think about environment or nature without thinking on what is the history of science. And this, the importance of art within all of this is that both the history of art and the history of sciences is where the concept of nature we have today, how do we understand it, what kind of attitudes and behaviors we have towards nature today. They compose both knowledges. And I wanted just to mention from this slide the idea of scale and complexity, because I think in the way in which I was trained as a biologist is there is this detachment between the micro level of understanding tissues, cells, and moleculars, and then the way in which ecology is treated. I don't think there is such a separation. I think it all comes together. I'm analyzing biodiversity through this vital or vibrant matter makes this relation very clear. So I'm going to present two projects. First is Ecolab project, which is a project that when I was working on that, the questions for my PhD came, and the other project is Herbarium, which is part of the fieldwork for my research. Both came from this art practice. I think is important, and they come from the symbiosis between art centers or cultural centers, institutions, universities, and artists, creators, designers, researchers, but also activists. And they are laboratories, learning environments, or knowledge archives. So Ecolab was a project that was working for 2 years in Laboral Centro de Arte, which is an art center located in Gijón. Gijón is a small city in the north coast of Spain. And it was a kind of laboratory, experimental laboratory on ecology art and open electronics. And Ruben Suarez, one of my colleagues at work, he presented this project as a very technical and from the point of view of eco-design. And then after a couple of years, Pedro Soler, who is a curator from Barcelona, he's very involved in Nangar as well, made possible to put together all the agents and people that we were interested in developing things around the idea of ecology and art in Asturias, in the region. And we were started to organize activities and a kind of cultural program over these 2 years. My role within this project was to give the conceptual framework adapted to the resources we had and adapted to the context. Asturias is a region that has a strong rural identity, and it's difficult sometimes to present projects that have a strong technological quality, and we tried to respond to that too. So the objective of the project was to create new ways of relationship to humans and environment, more than environment, biosphere, and through representations, but also through events, through ways of relationship. And the other objective was to establish a dialogue between what's low-tech and high-tech, and how it's possible to combine these two, or to create this dialogue. So we transformed a courtyard that was a derelict land within the building of the cultural center. It's the green space that you can see in the images. We transformed this space. We cultivated vegetables, create a pond, and the inventory of species. We had a meteorological station capturing data, and we had some artists that did some visualizations of this data, and created prototypes for urban agriculture, different events. Well, 2 years of work. The second year we were working there, Pedro Soler was not with us, and me and Ruben were leading the project. And I think what we did mostly was to look for audiences, to look for publics, to intuitively look for people who was interested in this kind of speech, in this kind of discourse. And financial questions finished the project, and this is how the pond looked in 2012, and this is how it looks today. This is a photograph taken in the courtyard a couple of weeks ago. It's a perfect kind of soup for cultivating microorganism or whatever. And the second project I want to talk, is herbarium. Yeah. What is the video now? Is this? Yeah. How can I? No, yes, play, but la pantalla completa? Okay. So herbarium comes from a personal desire of retelling the story of plants in another way. A way in which is not exclusive of the knowledge of the classical systematic botanics. Sorry. No sé. If you can put the video and I keep...
¿Dónde lo tienes?
Yes, I know the sound is off, yeah.
¿Tienes una carpeta del vídeo?
Yes, it's
¿Aquí?
Sí.
¿Es este?
Sí.
Vídeo debajo, ¿no? ¿Dónde está el vídeo? Espera, el vídeo es el de abajo.
Ah, el de abajo, sí. Okay.
Aquí, sí.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about this. So it's a desire of creating or retelling the stories of plants, plants thought as political agents. And retelling the story through scientific knowledge, but also ethnographic or ethnobotanic knowledge and artistic knowledge. I think through the history of natural sciences, we can see how science and art confluent in the way in which representations are presented, in the way in which what were called artists or scientists looked at things. And I presented this project for a foundation that is placed in León, in a village called Cerezales del Condado. The foundation is called Fundación Cerezales Antonino y Cinia. It's a rural area, and we organized the project through workshops in which we work with inhabitants of the village and the villages around the area, and we try to get to know this ethnobotanic knowledge or traditional knowledge the people in the area has, combining with bringing stories about the history of natural sciences, but also workshops on artistic strategies or media. It's a way of dealing with the commons, how this knowledge is part of these commons, and how today we have to kind of translate this onto the historical time we live. This project has different levels of working this. For me, it was also a way in which I could get to know this community.
Pues muchas, porque para mantener esas vacas hay que trabajar. Calabacines, pepinos, después tengo patatas, tengo cebollas, zanahoria y fresas. Eso de comer yo sola. Cuando me toca el agua yo tengo que regar, y cuando excavo yo tengo que excavar y plantarlo y todo. Yo solita, es muy poco, ¿eh? Antes tenía más, pero...
Cuando el furor ese del lúpulo, nos fuimos para Vizcaya y ya no.
A bit of the voices of the people. So for me, for my research, it was the opportunity to get to know this community and to get data for my investigation, and sort of laboratory of social research too, and to get to know this anthropological knowledge of the organic, right? And I'm trying to develop this project further with other dimensions. First is the interface in internet. We are documenting everything in internet, and how to develop and to create this interface and this rhizomatic knowledge about the plants. Other way to develop the project is about the sound, how the plants also have this quality of sound. And I think this is more or less a summary of this project. I will conclude saying that I think these, all these kind of projects create a kind of net garden of weaving this desire of constructing new ways of inhabit, and to make it closer, the relationship between the organic and also the social aspect of life. And I think that's me. Yeah, that's all for now. Thank you.
Bueno, buenos días, buen día, good morning. Gracias por aceptar mi participación en el Congreso. I'm going to give my presentation in Spanish. I'm sorry for those of you who don't speak Spanish, but you can come to me anytime after my talk, and I will, let's have a talk. And you know, I will. The structure of the presentation will be, first of all, I will try to map the Anthropocene from the field of geology and biology. Second of all, I will try to identify the implication of the Anthropocene from the humanities, and finally, I'm going to talk about the interest that that raises the reflection of the Anthropocene from the arts, from the field of arts. Bueno. Parece que somos cada vez más conscientes del impacto de los humanos sobre los ecosistemas, o por decirlo de otra manera, del paso de un sistema global dominado por la naturaleza a uno dominado por el ser humano. Desde las ciencias naturales, este impacto se ha venido cuantificando desde el final de la segunda mitad del siglo XVIII, a partir de la teoría de la era antropozoica propuesta por el geólogo italiano Stoppani, antecedente de la noosfera, la antroposfera, y más recientemente se viene formalizando en la teoría del antropoceno. Desarrollada por Paul Crutzen y Eugene Stormer, la hipótesis que plantea el antropoceno apunta a la actividad humana como la fuerza biogeofísica dominante, cuyo impacto en los procesos biológicos, físicos y químicos en el planeta permiten hablar de una nueva era en la historia geológica a escala global. El giro falla medioambiental que presupone la tesis del antropoceno ha sido estudiado en términos de escala, magnitud y significación en relación a la modificación de los océanos, a las transformaciones en la biosfera terrestre, a las concentraciones de CO2 en la atmósfera y al aumento de la temperatura global, localizándose lo que se podría considerar como una estratigrafía del antropoceno. Crutzen localiza el inicio de esta nueva era geológica a finales del siglo XVIII y asociado principalmente al impacto de la quema de combustibles fósiles en la atmósfera a escala global, aunque la abolición del barbecho en el siglo XVI puede ser considerado como el origen que instigó una revolución agraria que posibilitó el desarrollo de la industrialización. En cualquier caso, lo más relevante es que esta teoría presupone la alineación de la actividad humana con las principales fuerzas naturales, entre las cuales está la influencia solar, la volcánica y la propia selección natural, responsables del cambio medioambiental a escala global, y identifica una multiplicidad de elementos que permiten constatar el abandono del Holoceno, la época interglacial anterior que se desarrolló 11.784 millones de años atrás. Sin embargo, describir el antropoceno a partir de datos o evidencias científicas es tan solo una opción. Teniendo en cuenta que esta hipótesis señala el comportamiento humano, particularmente la esfera social, política y económica, como motores del cambio, quizás la tarea más urgente sea explicar, analizar el fenómeno desde las humanidades y las ciencias sociales. La urgencia viene determinada por la presunción de que mientras las evidencias científicas explicarían las consecuencias sobre los ecosistemas, el estudio de la interacción humana, la cultura, la sociedad y las formas de organización podrían explicar las causas. Sin embargo, mientras que las contribuciones desde el campo de las ciencias naturales han venido siendo de las más abundantes sobre el tema, en la literatura generada desde las humanidades y las ciencias sociales constituye la gran asignatura pendiente. En el artículo Reconceptualizing the Anthropos in the Anthropocene, Integrating the Social Sciences and Humanities in the Global Environmental Change Research, es quizás el estudio más minucioso sobre las aportaciones que se han hecho desde el campo de las humanidades y las ciencias sociales al análisis sobre las emergencias que plantea esta nueva era geológica a escala global, analizando el rol que pueden jugar ambas disciplinas en el entendimiento del carácter y el estatus del conocimiento científico sobre la naturaleza. El interés del artículo radica en identificar 5 desafíos fundamentales con los que estos campos pueden contribuir al análisis del complejo fenómeno. El primero pasaría por entender el medio ambiente como una categoría social. Número 2. La noción de los límites planetarios debe ser sensible a la experiencia humana y a la naturaleza construida por los humanos y se debe situar en un marco específico que incluye cuestiones de distribución, geografía, equidad, además de considerar los efectos medioambientales sobre los humanos. Número 3. Es hora de articular la cultura de las sociedades del antropoceno en base a la colaboración entre los científicos de las ciencias naturales, enfatizando una nueva fusión entre lo natural y lo ideal, transformando los síndromes contemporáneos de ansiedad, deriva y autoengaño en una tarea más positiva que consiste en construir una cultura de la sostenibilidad. 4. Debemos explorar cómo la tradición del pensamiento occidental puede confrontar sus propios límites, sus límites internos, aumentando y adaptando su flexibilidad a la condición humana del antropoceno, superando el dualismo naturaleza-cultura. Número 5. Reflexionar sobre cómo se puede articular la direccionalidad hacia las sociedades del antropoceno en base a su anclaje en la democracia, implementada en la búsqueda de nuevas tecnologías, conocimiento médico e ideas sobre nuevos modelos económicos y sociales. El texto contribuye así a un pozo de conocimiento interdisciplinar que se viene generando históricamente a lo que se puede entender como una suerte de pensamiento ecológico que se ha venido generando desde el campo de la ecología cultural, antropológica, económica, histórica, la sociología medioambiental, la ecolingüística y más recientemente desde los departamentos de Environmental Humanities y de los programas de investigación de las instituciones culturales como el proyecto Das Anthropocene acogido en la Haus de Cultuur en de Welt a lo largo de los años 2013-2014. En lo relativo al campo del arte, en las últimas décadas han proliferado una serie de prácticas artísticas que reflexionan sobre esta condición de las sociedades del antropoceno, cuya amplia recepción se ilustra en un gran número de exposiciones y proyectos comisariados dedicados a explorar este tema. Entre las más prominentes destacan aquellas que mostraron prácticas colaborativas con las que se transformaban físicamente las ecologías y creativamente las políticas, como por ejemplo Ecovention, Current Art to Transform Ecologies, Groundworks, Environmental Collaboration in Contemporary Art. Otras, en cambio, que por medio del diseño como método desarrollaban estrategias relacionadas con el reciclaje, el activismo comunitario, la investigación de carburantes sostenibles y de usos alternativos de la tierra, como Beyond Green, Towards a Sustainable Art. Otras, en cambio, monotonizan la capacidad estratégica del capitalismo para absorber la retórica verde o apropiarse de los recursos y manipular los recursos genéticos y biológicos, como es el caso de Greenwashing, Environment, Perils, Promise and Perplexities, Biopiracy o Alternature, y otras que incluyen proyectos más cercanos al territorio de lo utópico, que devuelven al individuo la capacidad de imaginar, secuestrada, de imaginar nuevos futuros alternativos a los distópicos, como Brave New World o Futurs abandonats, de Maya era la cuestión. El tema también ha sido objeto de estudio de la octava Bienal de la Bienal de Sharjah de los Emiratos Árabes o la novena Bienal de Taipei, titulada The Great Acceleration, comisariada por Nicolas Bourriot. El interés que suscita la reflexión sobre esta noción expandida de la ecología o de la sostenibilidad desde la práctica artística, como diagnostican Maya y Reuben Fox, reside en su capacidad de activar una multiplicidad de reflexiones en torno a los propios materiales de las obras, los códigos del diálogo de los proyectos con la institución en función de su naturaleza crítica y una reflexión más general acerca de la insostenibilidad de la institucionalización y mercantilización del sistema del arte contemporáneo. Ofrece además un desafío al hábito arraigado de producir objetos y a la incansable búsqueda de la novedad. Todos estos puntos de fuga se pueden localizar en la obra de los artistas que se formaron parte de la muestra 7.000 millones, acogida en el Spider Contemporáneo de Castelló en abril de 2014. Como podéis intuir, 7.000 millones hace referencia al número estimado de habitantes del planeta, a los habitantes humanos. Según los comisarios del proyecto, la exposición parte de una idea del desarrollo sostenible formulado en 1987 y la citan en su catálogo como aquella opción de satisfacer las necesidades de las generaciones presentes sin comprometer las posibilidades del futuro para atender sus propias necesidades. E indican que desde entonces cualquier agenda política ha pasado por enmarcar esta acción dentro de un triángulo que se podría establecer entre la sostenibilidad económica, social y medioambiental. De entre los proyectos destacamos The Radiant, de Otolith Group, un videoensayo que aborda el colapso de la central nuclear de Fukushima 1 provocado por el tsunami que desencadenó el terremoto Tohoku en 2011. Combinando informes históricos de los medios de comunicación y material de emisiones en directo con científicos, activistas y residentes, el film resucita la vieja promesa de la energía nuclear que gobernó la posguerra mundial en el actual contexto de devastación provocada por la radiación, formando una ecuación explosiva que abre fisuras físicas en el presente desamparado, dominado por la necropolítica de la radiación, una gobernabilidad de la muerte gestionada por el régimen nuclear global. Exceeding 2 Degrees es un proyecto de Tue Greenford para el cual el artista negoció con la institución la disminución de 2 grados, la calefacción del edificio, durante el periodo de muestra de la exposición. El ahorro energético, fruto de esa negociación, se invirtió en la reforestación del Amazonas, a través de la compra de una porción de selva amazónica. Otros proyectos como el Defendiendo el Territorio desde el Aire era fruto de una colaboración entre el colectivo Basurama y colectivos locales que a través de unas herramientas de código abierto que proporcionaba The Public Laboratory en Nueva York, lo que hacían era mapear el territorio y hacer referencia a mapear, como cartografiar el metabolismo de las ciudades, su degradación, etcétera. Voy finalizando. Oficina de Rescate Invertido de Neue es un servicio de rescate a los ciudadanos de las maniobras de la banca, formalizado en un asesoramiento gratuito in situ para el que se ha contratado un activista que trabaja en la colaboración con asociaciones y colectivos locales cuyo fin es orientar a los ciudadanos en la reapropiación de sus recursos por medio de los mecanismos que reproducen la ingeniería social que ejecuta el Estado y la banca, pero en este caso aplicados a ellos mismos. Literalmente, lo que se hacía con esas asesorías es orientar, asesorar a los ciudadanos en estrategias que literalmente lo que lo conseguían era expropiar dinero a la banca o, por ejemplo, contratar a un albañil desahuciado para quitar las puertas de los pisos expropiados por la Caja de Ahorros del Mediterráneo. Como tales, los proyectos entroncan con la teorización sobre las 3 ecologías de Guattari, que teorizó en 1989. Pero hay ciertos errores, hay ciertas imprecisiones que desestabilizan el rigor conceptual de 7 millones, que provienen de la formulación clásica que tiene del desarrollo sostenible a la cual se adhieren, de una particular concepción de la humanidad monumentalizada y de la omisión de los fines prácticos, especulativos, metafóricos e irónicos y su consideración como artefactos de imaginación política. Bueno, voy acabando. El entendimiento de estos 7 millones de habitantes como conformadores de este gran escenario de producción de estos mundos visualiza un tropos de una comunidad mítica, una noción de comunidad inclusiva sin desigualdades que incurre en la misma indefinición terminológica en la que se amparan las políticas neoliberales. Esta idea es tan ingenua como la concepción de la naturaleza como una entidad pacificadora, unificadora, que ha colonizado la consciencia colectiva de la modernidad, como sostiene Bruno Latour. Esquivar este enfoque monopolizador, exento de diferencias, producto de la ingeniería social de que habla Welt, pasa por desenredar los matices y revelar el discurso de la ideología que encierra el discurso del desarrollo, que no es otro que el mismo discurso del arte contemporáneo. Formular otra definición que vincule justicia medioambiental con justicia social, climática, hídrica, evidenciando los mecanismos del capitalismo para apropiarse de la vida en todos sus aspectos, en todas sus facetas, constituirá el imperativo de la práctica y de teoría artística. La disolución entre la naturaleza y cultura que plantea el antropoceno impone la necesidad de encontrarnos cara a cara con cuestiones incómodas, entre las cuales algunas de las más inmediatas son: ¿qué responsabilidad cotidiana tenemos ante el desplazamiento de la responsabilidad medioambiental de las industrias de Occidente a Oriente? ¿Qué responsabilidad social tenemos sobre las condiciones de vida de los trabajadores? En el mundo del arte, la pregunta no es muy distinta. ¿Cómo contribuimos al consumo de las formas culturales del capitalismo en un mundo dominado por la sobreproducción y la sobrecirculación en el arte contemporáneo? ¿Qué papel juegan las instituciones del arte contemporáneo en la expresión, análisis crítico y respuesta a la globalización? La pregunta común sigue siendo la misma. ¿Cómo articular las sociedades del antropoceno mediante nuevos modelos de resistencia individual, alternativas colectivas y decisiones políticas, partiendo de la premisa de que un crecimiento infinito no es posible en un planeta que dispone de recursos limitados? ¿Cómo invertir ese futuro distópico en un pragmatismo especulativo que transforme la crítica en proposición? Y entonces nos preguntamos, ¿y dónde queda el papel del arte en todo esto? ¿Es que acaso tiene que tener alguno? ¿Cuál es su rol en esta articulación? Resulta imperativo reexaminar las cuestiones fundamentales acerca de la vida, el cuerpo, la tecnología, la sensación y la experiencia, pero no como disputas teóricas en el reino de las ideas, sino como flujos materiales históricos que generan problemas no resueltos en la vida social. En este ejercicio, quizás, la práctica de la representación debe dejar paso para el de la metodología. Muchas gracias.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you two, Danielle and Victor, for hosting this and also for getting in contact with us beforehand. It was really helpful to meet the other speakers of the session. I would like to welcome you to visit with me the gardens and parks of Helsinki, because Melliferopolis is a project around bees in urban environments, and it is at the moment based in Helsinki. But before doing that, I would like to propose an exercise to you to introduce you to these animals that we're working with. So I would like you to let go of all the stuff that you have on your laps and in your hands. Just close the computers, put the tablets aside, drop the pens, and lean back in your seat comfortably, and close your eyes for a moment. And I would like you to stay with your closed eyes and just sense the room around you. And listen to what is going on and sense who else is in the room also. Sense if you feel the other people sitting with you who are here for the same purpose, to participate in a conference. concentrate on the room, maybe on the size of the room, and how does it feel with your eyes closed? How does it feel to be in this space? And stay with your eyes closed and in this sensing as I will turn on some sound for you. And now concentrate on what you're hearing. It is the sounds of insects flying. Stay with sensing the room around you, listening to this carpet of vibrations. And allow this sound to come inside of you, a sound created by a collective of animals. Now you can slowly open your eyes, but stay with the sound. Let the images come with the sound. But stay in the sensing of what is going on around you. Just allow these images to slowly become part of this sensation. And be aware that everything here is about functioning in a collective, functioning as part of a bigger whole. And individuality is not so important. It's about doing the share in the whole. So what we have just seen in the last 2 bits was a swarm that I filmed in Brussels. So I deal with honeybees in urban contexts, and I live in Brussels, and this swarm happened at the neighbors. And since they didn't have another place to go, they just hung on this table. And this is what happens in urban contexts. Bees have to swarm, that's their natural way of reproducing. And when they're in the city, they just hang on whatever they find, and in this case it was the table of the neighbors. So I would like to now tell you a few aspects of Melliferopolis, of this project that is happening in Helsinki. And the project is a transdisciplinary investigation around bees in urban contexts. And what we do is we have apiaries in Helsinki, and most of them are experimental hives. So we experiment with bee houses and with the tools that you use for beekeeping. We try to investigate scientific and philosophical reflections, and the idea is to see how we can get a view, an apicentric view instead of an anthropocentric view. And how we do this is with various formats. So it's activities where we invite people to participate, and it can be lectures, it can be workshops, it can be performances, all kinds of different formats. But the essence of the project is really that people can participate, so that they can do hands-on work with us, and they have direct experiences by coming to do these activities with us. And another thing that we encourage is that people, if they are inspired by the project, they propose their own idea, and they can then come up with something, and we try to realize it together. So it's a lot about collaborations. And I want to now present to you 2 aspects of the project, or 2 examples, of which one is the Hexa Hive. And the Hexa Hive is an experimental hive that was developed and designed in 2011 and 12. And it was then placed in a public place in the Botanic Garden in Helsinki. And it was quite successful, so we made more of these boxes. And you see these boxes, they're hexagonal, so they are mimicking this very typical shape that is associated with bees. But these boxes can be bee houses, but they can also be seats. So the idea is that bees can use it, but also humans can use it to sit in the vicinity of these animals and to contemplate and to see how far you want to go close to them. And so we installed the so-called Hexa Hive village at the campus in Aalto University. And this was a large green area and not very much used. And so we installed these boxes with the bees and also the seats, and all of a sudden people started to hang out around there, and they started to use this place as a recreational place. And then one artist came to us and he asked if he could do an experiment with sound around these hexahives. And so what he did is he prepared one of the frames with microphones inside, to put inside of the box. And so we put these frames, and then the bees started to build around it. So you see here how the wax structure is starting to be created around this thing that looks like a coin, which is a contact microphone. And what we did then was a sound picnic. We called it a sound picnic, so it was a sound event where we invited people to come and listen to these live sounds from the bees. And we invited local artists, sound artists, to jam on these sounds. And I would like you to see a very short movie. About this event that was happening in 2013.
Basically, we invited different artists to use the sounds from the hives. There's different sounds in there. There's something installed inside the hives. There's something outside, microphones that capture the sounds of the bees flying into the hives and back. And the artists are basically invited to use these sounds and use them in creative ways to produce music, basically, that you can listen to in this kind of setting, like in this park area.
And so this became like a garden party in a way. And people hung out there for 4 or 5 hours because this kept on going on. And it was a wonderful day outside, and we were just all enjoying. And what happened is people were very relaxed around the bees, and the bees went around their business, and people were just hanging out, and it was a very comfortable party, basically. So what I want to say with this is that we, as I said, we invite people to come up with their own ideas, and then we see how we can integrate this, and so the project becomes also part of the local community because people can make it their own in a way. The second example that I want to present is a workshop that we did last year. It was called Architecture for Bees and Bees for Architecture. And these workshops are happening every year in the summer in Helsinki, so we are inviting people from all walks of life and from international artists and, yeah, but all walks of life. And in this case, we had Nigel Hellier, an Australian artist who was guiding the workshop. And the idea was to produce something for the bees, a comfortable experimental hive, and it was co-created with the participants. And again, I want to show you a few images to illustrate how this was going on. So this was happening in the Botanic Garden of Helsinki. That is one of our main collaborators in the city. And the materials that we used were especially felt. And felt is a quite unusual material for bees to use, so we tried to see how we could prepare it so that the bees would feel comfortable in it. You see Nigel. And the frame was quite broad, so the idea was just to use felt, but otherwise people could create together whatever they wanted to create. But it had to be functional, because at the end we did put bees inside. And it was a 3-day workshop, and people were integrating their backgrounds and just working with the materials that were there. We used branches and sticks from the Botanic Garden. And we were quite lucky because, again, the weather was very good. see this flower shape that people came up with that became then this experimental hive. Objects that should, it's a different project that should go on top of a hive so that bees can go inside of the glass and can construct the wax comb on top and around these objects that people created. And here we put some food for them to start with, because at the beginning the hive is completely empty, so if you put a little bit of wax and honey, they have it easier to start. To fast forward a bit. So here you see the finished hive, and it was then hauled on top of a tree, and we put a colony. It was by coincidence that same day, that on the last workshop day, a swarm was found, and so we could put them inside, and we hauled them up, and they're quite high, and the idea is that humans cannot interfere, so it's only for the bees. They can build, they can go about their business, but you cannot interfere. You cannot open and take out the honey or change this hive anyhow.
Yes. Congratulations. You have done a good enough job.
So why I'm showing you this is because in the coming season in 2015, we want to make the so-called swarming event with this hive. So what happened is the bees are now in there, and they will hopefully survive the winter, and next year they will be strong enough to swarm. So there will be a swarm that cannot be controlled by us because we cannot access this hive. So the idea was to, instead of trying to manage and control, to make an event out of it where we invite people to come. It's going to be like a flash mob. We're going to inform people when the swarming is happening, and we want people to come and experience this and just be around when this wonderful thing is happening. And of course, we cannot predict when this is going to be, so this is part of the project also, that there is chance and coincidence, and you cannot really say when things are happening, but this is, yeah, part of when you're working with life. And so if, in case you're in Helsinki next summer, please come and visit us. And if something inspired you here and you would like to propose something around bees in urban contexts, please get in touch. And just one last word, because my main collaborator is Ulla Taipale. She's a Finnish person living in Barcelona, and unfortunately she's not here today. But it's mostly the two of us who are running this project. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the talks. I have a question for Sara. Because I like the talk about Tillmans very much, and for me it's wonderful to see that you focused on the change of producing images by artists, and also taking into consideration there is the object behind that, or there's the materiality. But do you think that Tillmans, or the artist you will refer to in your PhD, also will refer to the economic production side of the objects?
Do you mean the economic production of the object, the images, and so forth? Most definitely, and I think I will be dealing with that in another chapter in my thesis, when I trace, you know, this kind of not only like Tillmans' mode of production, but also, you know, and it's something which can be traced back to their early, you know, avant-garde and their politics behind those early artists, specifically when Tillmans is dealing with a photocopying machine, and also the earlier abstracts, which he's still working on right now, how, you know, tracing that back to the reproduction, not only of images, but a lot of other things as well. So, most definitely, thank you. Quiet.
Anyone else?
Okay.
as I'm the one who is preparing the coffee, I can make freely a question, so you have to wait for the question. Well, I enjoy a lot all your talks. I would like to, I think there is a concept that has appeared a lot, that is the one of ecology. For example, Lorena has detailed the concept that he understands it as not as a concept opposed to micro or individual things. And I would like you maybe to share or to detail the concept of ecology applied to each of your research. If you could share it with us to put it in common. I mean, you have talked also about Atari, and I think it's interesting to...
You go. You're going to talk about ecology?
Yeah. You know, I'm the one who prepared the coffee, so you can decide.
For me, ecology is a science or a way of getting to know that explains the relationships between beings, whether they are humans or non-humans. And I really think that what there is understanding of the three ecologies are quite, I don't know, possible, quite, for me it's a good pose or framework to analyze or to understand what ecology is. This idea of the ecology as this environmental ecology and the physical, then is the social, in terms of what are the relationships between people and the different social agents, and then a kind of mental ecology which applies to the way in which we construct our own subjectivities about what is the environment and how do we relate everybody in a different way to what is outside or inside, because ecology is not only about what is the public realm, but it's also about the private. Ecology is a domain that touches our private lives. What we eat and the way in which we reproduce are very important in ecology as well. And I think that's my appreciation.
Should I go? I mean, in terms of my project, I'm most interested in the ecology of things and how, can you hear me? Yeah. So those synergies between nature and culture and how things and objects also affect a way of being, or human life, nature and so forth, and also kind of the effect of technologies, new media technologies, all the technologies and pictures, also changing or being, nature being and human being and whatever nature means. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Since I'm mostly working in urban environments, for me, it's the most interesting part is to look at this city context. And I think cities have been changing so much, and you find so much that is ecological, so to say, now in urban environments. But I think what in this project we're trying to play with is this border between what is known to people and what is not so known to people. So although people, I mean, they know the city and they know the rules and they know how to behave in the botanic garden, and then we introduce the bees and all of a sudden you have some entity that is not so controllable and not manageable and you don't really know what is going on. So for me, the interest is on this borderline. And I think both of it is it has to do with ecology, but to kind of play with this, transition between the known and the not known.
Oh, okay. I think one thing is to define ecology from in the frame of like a discipline, you know, like as a discipline. Ecology as a discipline comes from sort of a discipline in the frame of or within biology, let's say, or so. But a completely different thing is to define ecology as some sort of like way of thinking. And in this sense, I think Guattari helped, expand like a notion of ecology that was very narrow, and I think is still very narrow actually. And I think the challenge today is to grasp an expanded notion of ecology that includes notions or aspects or questions about postcoloniality, and this, I think, the Anthropocene really, it's like the framework in which we can work and see how these dichotomies between like nature and culture, subject and object, body and mind, are still, to challenge. I mean, this is the way. And I try to escape. Like, I come from art history, but I'm trying to escape now. Actually, like, I don't feel comfortable in art history anymore. And yeah, because I see everything as as an ontology divorced from the social and the political in general. So yeah, I'm kind of very uncomfortable now. So I'm trying to reflect on that, through this expanded notion of ecology that include us all in this context. So it's very complex actually, but we need an effort to grasp and to analyze our context. I think it's really urgent and imperative. Yeah.
It's more a comment and not another question, because all your talks gave me a lot to think, and I think what I see as a kind of context that all brings this together is that we think in this conference about objects, of course about subjects too, and then also about ecology, what you brought up today, this morning. And I think this goes together in the age of mass consumerism and mass production, because it's not just one subject. We are already almost 7 billion, and they're all using new technologies, not all of them, but most of our cultures now. And of course, waste stream and pollution goes hand in hand. And then again, we have people like you going into the communities and on a smaller scale talk about these things. So thank you.
I have a question for Christina, sorry. Are there any legal requirements to place beehives in Helsinki or Brussels? Do you have any problems with that?
The legal requirements are very low. So, I mean, if you place it in public, like in Helsinki, then you just have to talk to the owner of the place, which in that case is the city. But usually, it's the neighbors who decide. So, I mean, you can place bees, as long as the neighbors don't say anything, it's fine. Mm-hmm. If you place them on your private property in Brussels, for example, you have to make sure that there's a 2-meter high obstacle. It can be a fence or a wall or something that is dividing the bees from the neighbor. But this is just, I mean, to satisfy the law, because of course the bees fly and they couldn't care less about 2-meter high walls. So in that sense, yeah, you just have to talk to the owner, basically. Okay. And what you also have to do is you have to become part of a beekeeping association, of a local beekeeping association. Then you're insured. So if something happens, then they cover insurance.
Thanks.
So yeah, I think I was just a reflection I have about the discursive, like the discursive contexts. I don't think, like, in one hand I see like the context of art, like the art context, like some projects that are taking place in the art domain, like in the art context, and others that are not taking place, that are taking place either like in the urban or the rural, and both have very like potential. Actually, I'm not saying that we have to deny or silent or reject any like the discursivity of the exhibition space, but really like articulate all these axes, like all this ecological thinking in general. So I think this is kind of the thing that puts us together, like the both 4 talks. They both have been like working in the in the rural, like in the public space, but also in the museum, and both were more attached perhaps in the, and so yeah, here we are. And we're trying to do something. Yeah, thanks to the few of you.